My name's Taylor, and I'd only been working at Brandon's Bistro for 2 days. It was the kind of upscale place where the cutlery was polished hourly and the regulars wore wristwatches worth more than my car. Everyone warned me about Table 9. Not the table itself, but the man who always sat there. Ethan Langford. A self-made tech millionaire, big investor in town, and known for making staff cry like it was a sport. He snapped fingers, demanded things with no, please, or, thank you, and if his wine wasn't precisely 60 degrees Fahrenheit, he'd toss it back and scream about amateurs. Just don't look him in the eye, whispered my coworker Jenna, her hands shaking as she handed me the order pad. And if he throws something, just say, thank you, and walk away. I nodded, pretending not to care. But inside, my stomach churned. At 7 p.m. sharp, he entered. Designer suit. Perfect hair. Ego so big it entered the room before he did. He didn't wait for a hostess, just marched over to table 9 and sat, snapping his fingers before even glancing at a menu. Jenna gave me a terrified look. You're his server tonight. I exhaled, buttoned my vest, and walked over. Good evening, sir, I said calmly. Would you like to start with the wine list? He didn't look up. You're new. I hate new. Bring me the Barolo from 2016. Not 2015. If I taste oak, I'll send it back. And if it's warm, well, you'll wish you hadn't been hired. I nodded politely. One perfectly chilled 2016 Barolo. Right away. As I turned, he said under his breath, let's see how long this one lasts. But he didn't know me. Not yet. And he definitely didn't know what I was capable of. I went to the back and asked Marco, our sommelier, for the 2016 Barolo. He groaned. Langford again? You sure it's worth it? He yelled at me last week for the wrong swirl. I'll handle it, I said. Marco handed over the bottle like it was a loaded weapon. Good luck, rookie. I brought it out on a silver tray, bottle label facing him. 2016 Barolo, sir. Chilled to 60 degrees exactly. Langford looked up for the first time, cold, amused eyes scanning me like I was a grocery item he didn't remember adding to his cart. You look ambitious, he said, voice laced with condescension. Let's see how you pour. I didn't flinch. I angled the bottle perfectly, allowing just enough air in, letting the dark red stream hit the glass without a splash. He sniffed it once. Took a sip. Then, made a face. Too cold. Amateur move. I opened my mouth to protest, but he raised his hand. Don't argue, he snapped. Go get me the risotto. Truffle. No mushrooms. And if it's too salty, you'll be bussing tables at some truck stop next week. Other customers were staring. My cheeks burned, but not with shame, with fire. I was raised to stand tall. Not to get stepped on. As I walked back toward the kitchen, I saw him smirking. Laughing under his breath. Something clicked inside me. This man didn't want service. He wanted submission. He was about to find out the new waitress wasn't here to play his game. He was about to get served, just not the way he expected. Back in the kitchen, the staff was buzzing. Word had already spread, Langford's in rare form tonight. I told Chef Ramon about the risotto order. No mushrooms, light salt, I said, keeping it cool. Ramon narrowed his eyes. He sent back 3 plates last time and called me a glorified lunch lady. Want me to spit in it? I cracked a smile. Nah. I've got a better idea. As the risotto cooked, I reviewed everything I'd seen about him. He never tipped. He always found something wrong. And he especially hated being challenged. So, I decided to challenge him, not with attitude, but with poise. Precision. Patience. When the risotto was ready, I garnished it with a single sprig of parsley and carried it out like a diplomat handling nuclear codes. He didn't thank me. Just shoved his fork in, chewed dramatically, and sighed loud enough for the room to hear. Overcooked. And what is this? He said, lifting the parsley like it was roadkill. That's parsley, sir, I said calmly. Fresh from our rooftop garden. Pretentious, he scoffed, pushing the plate aside. You've wasted my evening. I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice even. Sir, if you're dissatisfied, I'd be happy to speak with management. I am management, he barked. My company owns a majority share in this restaurant group. You're just a temp in a borrowed vest. That did it. Silence fell around us like a curtain. Everyone stared, not because he'd insulted me, but because I didn't blink. I just smiled. Then I guess I'm the only one here who's not afraid of the owner. He blinked. And for the first time that night, he didn't have a comeback. Langford leaned back in his chair, stunned. The usual grin, the one that followed every insult, was gone. I stood straight, not defiant, just steady. Professional. Calm. Jenna dropped a spoon in the distance. No one moved to pick it up. I'm sorry, I said with a soft smile. I thought owning the restaurant meant setting an example, not making the staff walk on eggshells. His jaw clenched. Do you know who I am? Of course, I replied. You're the man who turned a tech empire into a reason to treat people like dirt. But around here? You're just another guest. There was a ripple through the room. The couple at table 6 stopped mid-bite. A businessman near the bar dropped his phone. Langford's hand slowly curled into a fist, but I wasn't afraid. Not because I was trying to be brave, but because I had already decided, if this job required fear, I didn't want it. He stood up, towering over me. I held my ground. You're done, he said through gritted teeth. Actually, said a voice behind him, I think you are. Everyone turned. It was Brandon himself, the owner of the bistro. Quiet, refined, and rarely ever seen outside his office upstairs. Langford spun around. Brandon, I've been watching, Brandon interrupted. I've tolerated your tantrums for too long, Ethan. But threatening my staff. Disrespecting this place. That ends now. Langford scoffed. You wouldn't have a business without my investment. Brandon smiled politely. You're right. That's why I bought your shares last week. Quiet deal. Effective today. Langford's face drained of color. And one more thing, Brandon added, nodding to me. Taylor here. Gets a raise. Langford stood frozen, as if someone had yanked the ground from under him. You bought me out, he spat. Brandon nodded. The board agreed unanimously. Investors were tired of cleaning up your messes. We want this place to be known for class, not chaos. A hush fell over the bistro. I stepped aside as Brandon approached Ethan's table. You're welcome to finish your meal, Ethan, he said coolly. But you'll be paying full price. And after tonight, you're not welcome here again. Langford's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around the room, and for once, nobody averted their eyes. Not the busboy. Not the kitchen staff peeking through the door. Not even Jenna. He was a man used to commanding every room. Now, he couldn't even control the table he once ruled. With shaking hands, he yanked out his wallet, threw $100 bill on the table, and stormed out, no thank you, no smug smirk. Just silence behind him, broken only by the gentle chime of the door as it closed. The entire room stayed still for a beat. Then someone started clapping. Then another. And then, the entire restaurant erupted in applause. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there, stunned. Jenna hugged me tight. You did it, she whispered. No one's ever stood up to him before. Brandon came over and extended a hand. You kept your cool better than most managers I've hired. If you're interested, I've got a lead server position open. I blinked. Me? He smiled. You earned it. Table 9 will never be the same. That night, as the last guests left the bistro, the energy in the air felt different. Lighter. For the first time, the staff wasn't walking on eggshells. They were smiling. Joking. Free. I changed out of my uniform and stepped out into the alley behind the restaurant, taking a breath of cool night air. My heart was still racing, not from fear, but from something else. Pride. Brandon came out a few minutes later, sipping an espresso. You sure you haven't worked in this business before? He asked. Only a few weeks, I replied. But I've been dealing with people like Langford my whole life. He nodded. Well, that wasn't just customer service. That was leadership. I shrugged. I just couldn't let him treat people like that. That's exactly why I want you leading the team. I looked at him, hesitant. What if I mess up? He grinned. Then you learn and come back stronger. That's what real leaders do. By the following week, I had my own nameplate on the lead server station. Staff came to me with questions. Jenna beamed every time I walked past. Even Chef Ramon called me boss now, half joking, half not. And as for table 9, we turned it into a reserved table for employee breaks, a quiet corner to breathe, sip coffee, and remind ourselves that no job, no title, no amount of money should ever come before basic respect. Ethan Langford never came back. But his legacy remained, not as a tyrant, but as the moment everything changed. Not just for the bistro. But for me. 3 weeks had passed since Langford stormed out of Brandon's bistro, and things had never been better. Morale was up. Tips were flowing. And I'd settled into my role as lead server like I was born for it. But trouble doesn't always knock at the front door. Sometimes, it drives up in a Bentley. It was Friday night, and I was just seating a couple when I saw it, the long, sleek black car rolling to a stop outside the window. A man stepped out in a gray suit, tall, confident, and unmistakably smug. It wasn't Langford. It was his lawyer. He walked straight up to Brandon, handed him a folder, and left without a word. Brandon opened it slowly. His brow furrowed. What is it? I asked. He handed it to me. A letter. From Langford Enterprises. Notice of intent to open a competing establishment across the street. At the bottom, a handwritten note. Let's see how long you last when you don't have me to bankroll your dreams. E.L. Brandon smirked. He's making it personal. I folded the letter and slipped it into my apron pocket. Good, I said. So will we. Because if Ethan Langford wanted a restaurant war, he just picked a fight with the wrong waitress. Langford didn't waste time. 2 weeks later, a luxury restaurant opened across from Brandon's bistro. It was called Dominion. All black marble, gold trim, and velvet curtains, like someone tried to build a throne room with a wine list. The signs were everywhere, fine dining. Real management. No amateurs, no excuses. It didn't take a genius to know who those jabs were aimed at. At first, some of our regulars crossed the street, curious to see what the Langford experience looked like without the yelling. But by the next night, 3 of them came back complaining. No soul over there, one said. Looks pretty, but feels like a funeral, said another. And then came Jenna's younger brother, a dishwasher Langford had poached from us with higher pay, returning to ask for his job back. He installed cameras above every sink, he whispered. If you forget to stack plates his way, you get fined. Brandon frowned. Fined? Yeah, the kid said. And the staff has to sign NDAs. About everything. Even toilet breaks. That was it. I looked at Brandon. We're not just fighting him with food. We're fighting for how people should be treated. He nodded. So how do we win? I smiled. We do what he never could. We let the staff lead. That weekend, I held a staff meeting. Everyone was included, from busboys to baristas. I told them, bring your ideas. Your creativity. Your weirdest menu items. If it makes customers smile, it's on the table. By Monday, we had a rotating chef's dare dish voted on by the team. Handwritten thank you notes on each table. A live pianist every Friday, played by our own dishwasher Miguel. And guess what? By Friday, Dominion was half empty. And our reservation list? Booked for 3 weeks. Langford may have built a palace. But we built a home. Langford didn't take defeat quietly. The emptier his restaurant got, the louder his ego roared. And when quiet tactics failed, he went nuclear. Friday night, mid-dinner rush, a food inspector walked into Brandon's bistro. Clipboard. Gloves. Zero smile. I received an anonymous tip about unsanitary practices, she said. Brandon raised an eyebrow. Anonymous? She nodded. And very specific. Over the next hour, she combed through everything, the kitchen, fridges, storage, even the staff's lockers. It was clear someone had fed her a script. She was looking for something, not inspecting. And just when I thought we were in the clear, she stopped at our sink. This pipe, she said. It's loose. Not leaking yet, but technically, that's a violation. Chef Ramon's mouth dropped. That's been like that for months. Even past the last 3 inspections. She shook her head. I'm afraid I have to issue a fine. And a temporary suspension. At least for 24 hours. Gasps echoed across the room. The staff stared at me. Guests looked confused. Some reached for their coats. And just outside the window, across the street, stood Ethan Langford. Smiling. Watching. I clenched my fists, then turned to the inspector. Is there a way to fix this now? She hesitated. If you had a certified plumber on site, I pulled out my phone. Dialed fast. Because before I worked here. Before I ever served a glass of wine or plated risotto. I worked 5 years as a licensed plumber's apprentice. And my cousin still ran the business. Get here in 20, I told him. And bring the wrench set. Within 18 minutes, my cousin Marcus rolled up in his old pickup with a full tool kit, certification badge, and a look that said, let's handle this. The inspector raised her eyebrows. Is he certified? Marcus handed her the paperwork. Certified. Insured. And this'll take 5 minutes, tops. As he crouched under the sink, the staff gathered around. Guests even stayed seated, watching with curiosity instead of leaving. The mood was tense, but hopeful. 5 minutes later, the pipe was sealed. Tight. Better than new. The inspector checked the repair, tested it twice, and sighed. Well, all violations corrected. You're good to operate. A cheer erupted through the bistro. But I wasn't done. I wiped my hands and walked right out the front door. Straight across the street. Into Dominion. The music stopped the moment I entered. Langford was at the host stand, smirking. Well, well. Did the inspector shut you down? I smiled politely. Nope. Turns out the pipe wasn't the problem. But maybe the leaks in your character are. His face soured. This isn't over. You're right, I said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. It's just beginning. Because your empire. It's built on fear. Ours. On respect. I turned and walked out. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, I heard murmurs. A few Dominion customers were standing, grabbing their coats. Some followed me back across the street. By the end of the night, Brandon's bistro was full again. Standing room only. Langford watched from his window. Alone. Epilogue: a year later Langford sold Dominion. Rumor has it, he lost millions trying to win a war he started with arrogance. As for me, I now manage Brandon's bistro full-time. And every time I look at table 9, the table where I almost broke, I remember, respect doesn't come from money. Power doesn't come from yelling. And nobody fears the rude millionaire anymore. Because the new waitress took him down, and built something stronger in his place. After Langford's fall, life didn't just go back to normal, it got better. Much better. Brandon's bistro became more than a restaurant. It became a movement. We hosted mentorship nights, where young workers from all over the city came in to learn from our chefs, our bartenders, even our servers. I gave talks about leadership, respect, and how to handle difficult people without losing your soul. And every time someone tried to rattle us with a tantrum or a threat, the team stood tall, like a wall that couldn't be shaken anymore. One day, Brandon called me into his office. "I've been offered a position on the board of a new hospitality group," he said. "They want to expand nationally, take this culture, this energy, to cities all over the country." I smiled. "That's amazing." He paused. "But I won't take it unless you do something for me." "What's that?" He slid a folder across the desk. "Taylor's Bistro, lead designer managing partner." My heart stopped. "You want me to?" "You earned it," he said. "This place started changing the day you stood up to a bully. I just followed your lead." I opened the folder. My name was there. In print. As an owner. A year ago, I was scraping by, trying to get through another shift. Now, I was running my own kitchen, guiding my own team, building something people believed in. Langford tried to tear me down. But he ended up giving me a platform I never dreamed I'd stand on. And the girl everyone thought would break? She became the name on the building that it had been over a year since Langford vanished from our lives. His restaurants failed. His board seats dried up. And his name, well, it carried a different weight now, one of scandal and arrogance. But power-hungry men rarely disappear quietly. On the grand opening night of Taylor's Bistro, the line wrapped around the block. Reporters. Influencers. Foodies from 5 cities. Inside, every table was lit with candles. Staff moved like clockwork. And at the center of it all, me. That's when I saw him. Ethan Langford. Dressed down, older, thinner. Not surrounded by suits or cameras. Just, him. He didn't demand a table. He walked to the counter, pulled off his sunglasses, and spoke the words I never expected: "I made a mess of everything. Thought I owned people because I own things. Turns out, I never had respect, only fear." Silence. He looked at me. "I heard what you've built. I wanted to see it myself. Even if I'm not welcome." I stared at him, unsure. The room waited. Then I nodded. "Everyone deserves one chance to change. But this isn't your redemption arc, Ethan." He gave a bitter laugh. "Fair enough." I pointed to a table near the back. "You can eat. But tonight, you're just a guest. No power. No shouting. No special treatment." He nodded and sat down. And for the first time in his life, he waited patiently. He said, "Please." He said, "Thank you." And when he left, he tipped 100%, in cash, quietly, and disappeared into the night. Did he change? Maybe. Maybe not. But I had. Because I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was the woman who turned a table of terror into a symbol of strength. I didn't need revenge. I had something better. A legacy.